Today's the day we get to unwrap our presents and see what Santa Claus brought us this year. The draft gets bigger, the combine gets bigger, and now the schedule release gets a little bit bigger every year too.
Joe Burrow and Josh Allen on Fox, that raised my eyebrows a lot. It's Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams going against Brian Flores and the Vikings' vaunted defense. Opportunity to showcase themselves on a new holiday. We know the Chiefs are starting to own Christmas, but they play on Thanksgiving this year. Love everything about these scheduling decisions. Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast. I am your host, Dave Helman, and it's here, y'all. The 2025 NFL schedule is in our hands. If you're listening to this, you've probably already looked over your team's slate of games, all the big matchups for prime time, for the holidays. We laugh because we've known who the opponents are for months. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a shock. But as I've said before, there's something so real about being able to hold it in your hands and not just know the order of the games, but plan your life for the fall, because now you know when the bye week is for you to plan that vacation where you might not be able to get to a game. Now you know what you're up against if you have to go to a wedding this fall, figuring out your travel, how to best not miss anything during that period of time. Now you know, okay, I can get to this home game. If I want to go to a road game, these three make sense. Oh, I'm going to a conference for work in November. What game could I get to if I'm in Chicago for a conference? That's why it matters, because it all feels real and we can all start building our lives around football season, because let's be honest, that is what we do. If you're listening to this show, you build your life around football season. I know I do. And I am so excited for this time of year because it means that the season feels real. It's not an abstract thing that I'm guessing about anymore. It's something that I can actually project. Okay, that's the soliloquy. That's why we're here. The NFL schedule release. I'm not going to go over every single game with you. You can do that. You can go look through the printable version on your team's website or wherever you prefer to look for that stuff. But we do have a really enlightening conversation for y'all today. Just like last year, we were lucky enough to be joined by our friend Mike Mulvihill, the president of Insights and Analytics for FOX Corp, one of the guys who actually gets to be part of the schedule making process. He helps Fox put together its slate of games for the upcoming season. He works with the NFL to get Fox the best matchups possible, the best full season schedule that he possibly can, and got a unique amount of insight about how that works, how the league works with its TV partners, how Fox prioritizes certain matchups, certain preferences, what it wants to see at different times in the season. It's a really fun conversation about the way the NFL schedule is put together. So without further ado, let's chat with him. All right, really excited to do this once again, bring in one of the busiest guys of this time of year. That would be the president of Insights and Analytics for FOX Corp, Mike Mulvihill, who is intimately involved in the creation and the final result of the NFL schedule. Mike, I mean, before we dive into this, how are you feeling on a day like today? Like, is it relief? Is it excitement? I would guess there's maybe some exhaustion in there. How do you feel to have this thing in the can?
Oh, it's excitement. It feels great to finally have the schedule in our hands. It kicks off a new season for us. It gives us a lot to think about and look forward to. It's a long process. It's a very collaborative process with the NFL. Today's the day we get to unwrap our presents and see what Santa Claus brought us this year. And it feels a little bit like the draft. It feels like draft day when every team goes out and says that they got exactly the player that they wanted. They got the guy that was at the top of their draft board. That's what all the networks will say today, too. We'll all say that we got the games we wanted and we're excited about our schedule. And I think everybody has reason to say that. Everybody has something to feel excited about and something to look forward to and something to take to their business partners and try to get them excited about the season too.
So I'm always curious about this exact week, and especially here in recent years, the NFL's got even better at making this into an event, and they'll tease things ahead of time. We here at Fox got to unveil the late season doubleheader a couple of days ago before the whole schedule came out. I'm curious what these final days look like. Like, is it all basically finalized a little bit ahead of time, and this is more about the rollout? Or I guess at what point does the schedule become ready for public consumption?
It's mostly about the rollout. This week in New York is what we call Upfront Week, which is every network doing a very elaborate presentation to their advertisers. And it's called Upfront Week because we're trying to get those advertisers to buy commercial time upfront rather than buy it as the season unfolds. Upfront Week used to be all about entertainment programming and doing a presentation about this show's going to be on Tuesday night, this show's going to be on Wednesday night. That has now evolved where a lot of Upfront Week is about talking about your sports programming and talking about the NFL specifically. So we wanted to have games to announce at our Upfront presentation on Monday. CBS announced their Thanksgiving game. NBC announced the season opener of Dallas at Philly. Everybody wants to have something that they can unveil to their advertisers when they do that big presentation. And so these final days leading up to the release of the schedule are mostly about those announcements that everyone is making at their upfront, which I think is an indication of just how important the NFL has become to the business overall. Not that we need another indication. I mean, we get it in the ratings every week. But this used to be a week that was very much focused on entertainment programming and trying to sell sitcoms and dramas to the marketplace. And now it's about who got the Super Bowl rematch, who got Dallas Philly, what's the week one game going to be for NBC, what are the Thanksgiving games. And so the schedule is mostly locked and loaded by the time those presentations start happening. We do have a couple conversations with the NFL about very specific games, not necessarily the biggest games, but just making sure that everything is in the right place and that games that could be early or could be late on a Sunday are where we think they're the most advantageous to us. This really isn't about, at least from where we sit, it's not about scrambling to get the schedule done and presentable. It's more about the cadence of announcing some of those big games and everybody trying to start telling their story about why they're optimistic about their season.
Would you have guessed, and maybe you would have, because the writing's been on the wall for a while at this point about how important live sports are. Would you have guessed that the schedule rollout would become this monster that it has really morphed into here over the last, whatever it is, 6 to 8 years, where it's really kind of become a spectacle unto itself?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've been doing this long enough that I can remember when the way we got the schedule was that we just walked over to the NFL office on Park Avenue. They handed
Right.
us the entire schedule. We took it back to our offices. It was embargoed for a day. Nobody could talk about it until a story ran in the New York Times the next morning. And that was it. It was pretty low key. It was a 2-column story in every newspaper. And that was the end of it. Now it's a multi-day event where, as I say, you're announcing games at your presentations to advertisers. One game was announced on the Today Show. It extends really over the entire week across every network. And, it is hard to believe that it's become as big as it has. But, it's just in keeping with a broader trend of the NFL being the most important thing in all of media. And it's not just that the games get bigger every year, but the draft gets bigger, the combine gets bigger, and now the schedule release gets a little bit bigger every year too.
One last general one before we dive into this actual season's schedule. But I am curious. I'm so fascinated by the league's process of churning out the schedule. And I think, like, at this point in the process, we know how much detail goes into it and how many permutations they look at before they choose the final one. I'm curious on your end, as somebody that works for one of the network partners, how many versions of the schedule do you see, or how much of a schedule do you see before the final one is ready to go?
Yeah, the number of versions of the schedule that I see is exactly one. I never see a complete version of the schedule prior to getting the finished product today. So we have indications of games that we're more likely to get, less likely to get, but we never see a complete draft. And honestly, I find that in these last couple days leading up to the schedule release, it's almost better not to pay attention to some of the things that you're hearing. There's so much rumor and speculation about who's going to get this game, who's going to get that game, that it starts to become more productive to just tune that out, not engage too much with rumors and speculation, and just wait for that one finished product that we can then take out and share with everybody.
I think that that makes so much sense when you think about some of these juggernaut matchups and how much all of y'all are probably vying for certain games to maybe just take a day or two to not worry about it. It's probably good for the psyche. So let's talk about this year's actual matchups. And you said it yourself. I mean, everybody's going to have a reason to be excited about their slate of games this year. For us here at Fox, what is that? What are you most geeked about for Fox this season and what they have on deck?
Well, there are a couple things, right? I think we are very pleasantly surprised to have the Super Bowl rematch again this year. We went 30 seasons without ever having a Super Bowl rematch on Fox. We got the Super Bowl rematch last year. It turned out to be not quite what we hoped it would be, right? It was Kansas City, San Francisco. The game was in week 7. By the time we got to week 7, San Fran's season was already a little bit snake bit. They had a lot of injury issues to work through. We didn't think we would be lucky enough to get the Super Bowl rematch again this year, and we did. We have Philly, Kansas City in week 2. Knock on wood, that's early enough in the season that both teams will be at full strength and they'll be fully healthy. And we really didn't think we had a path to getting the Super Bowl rematch again. So it's a very pleasant surprise to have it. I think what's also a nice thing to look forward to is that we haven't had a lot of top quality Buffalo games in these seasons where Buffalo has been an elite team and they've been knocking on the door of the Super Bowl, and Josh Allen's been playing at an MVP level. And we made a specific ask of the league this year that in addition to all our traditional NFC brands, we really wanted to make sure that we had some high quality Bills games. And we have Buffalo at home in December hosting Cincinnati, and then a couple weeks later hosting Philadelphia. So those are tremendous games. They're clearly far better than what we've seen from Buffalo in the past. And because they're late season home games, it introduces the possibility of maybe weather playing a role, which is always good for viewership. So I think between the Super Bowl rematch at the beginning of the season and those 2 big Buffalo home games in December, those are probably the tentpoles that we're the most excited about.
I feel really smart because look, I know the rules have changed in recent years where it's much more normal to see the Bills on Fox than maybe it was in the past. But even still, I saw that and I was like, oh, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen on Fox. That raised my eyebrows a lot. So I am right there with you, and I'm already excited for that. I know it's a late season game, but I've definitely got it circled in red ink. That raises a question I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned making an ask. Can you talk me through the process of what that looks like? I mean, is it a wish list? Is it just a list of games that you're really excited about? And how does that work with the other networks, which I'm sure have asks of their own that they have as well?
Yeah, so it's a wish list. We will submit a list to the league of the 50 games that we are most hopeful to get ranked in order. And we make asks that are maybe a little bit more general than drilling down on one particular game. So we did make an ask about the Bills, but we didn't necessarily ask for one specific Bills game. We made a more general ask about making sure that we get as much high quality AFC from the CBS side as they get from the NFC side. We made an ask about, trying to have a little bit more variety and diversity in our 425 schedule this year. Sometimes Fox is very, very reliant on the Dallas Cowboys. We wanted to have a little bit more of a mix of teams this year, so we only have 3 Dallas games as part of our America's Game of the Week window, where that has sometimes been 5 or 6, and we wanted to lean more into the Super Bowl champs and into Detroit and into those top-level AFC teams, and the league was responsive to that. But what we don't do is we don't go in and pound the table and say we have to have Philly, Kansas City. We have to have this game. That's probably just not very good politics. We want to be a little smarter and more diplomatic than that. And we want to recognize that there are four other companies out there that are paying billions for NFL rights, and they have a right to expect some good games too. So we want to be realistic about what we ask for. We want to make asks that are smart and strategic, but we don't want to do what I think would be careless and go in there and try to insist on one specific matchup.
Do you ever, or have you ever, and I'm curious about this because I mean the world of major network television seems very, very competitive. So I would understand if you don't ever talk to your network counterparts about this, but have you ever worked in conjunction with somebody else like, hey, we really want this. We'll give you this if you play ball with us here, or am I off base with that idea?
No, it really doesn't work that way. I can't think of a time where we've ever tried to make a formal or informal arrangement with another network. We actually did that on the collegiate side last year, where we worked out a trade with NBC to get them a game that they wanted for primetime, and I think it worked out to the benefit of both partners. But because the NFL retains authorship of the schedule and they assign the games, it's not conducted via draft like it is on the collegiate side. We really can't make a deal like that with another network. And even if we could, I don't know that we would. I think we have to trust the NFL to do what they do well and make the schedule and think it through and deliver something that's in everybody's best interest. I don't know that it would really be productive for us to try to make a side deal with another partner.
Fair. My other, and again, could be a total misconception, but I honestly don't know the answer. As far as the timing of this works, I mean, obviously you have your standalone, Monday, Thursday night football where that makes perfect sense. But for us at Fox, where you have multiple windows on a Sunday, does the league have final say over that, or is it Fox that determines, which windows of the day which games go into?
Yeah, great question. We do have early games and late games every Sunday. Sometimes that's a single header, sometimes it's a double header. The league has authorship. They hold the pen on which games go where, but they will reach out to us between the Super Bowl and today and say, well, what do you think of this game? Do you want it early or do you want it late? If you have this game late, would you rather have this game also late as a B game for the late window, or is it something you can get better use of in the early window? So we have input into that, and I think the league is really good about making sure that the games are where we think they should be. And then during the season, we have a high degree of flexibility to take a game that's a 1:00 game that turns out to be a lot stronger than we anticipated and move it into 425 and get it to a higher percentage of the country. So I feel like that's almost an evasive answer to your question because the league does hold the pen. Ultimately, it's up to them. But we have so much input into it, and they invite our input into it, that we rarely, very, very rarely feel like a game is in the wrong window or that it's not where we would want it to be.
That actually, it raises a question about something you mentioned earlier, which this Super Bowl rematch, Chiefs, Eagles, week 2, very early in the season. For myself as a reporter, it's extra exciting when you see a game like that early in the schedule and you say, well, like you mentioned with San Francisco and Kansas City the year before, there's less time for something to go wrong for these teams, which makes it seem that much more of an intriguing matchup to me. Does it work that way for y'all? I mean, I have to imagine the timing of some of these games matters when you think about how much of an impact it can make for you.
Yeah, look, I think we're all incented to try to get our seasons off to a very fast start. And I think the NFL has probably made more of an effort this year to front load the schedule than I have ever seen before. That means not just our Super Bowl rematch in week 2, but NBC using Dallas Philly to open the season. The YouTube game on week 1 Friday includes the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe NBC's first Sunday night game is Buffalo Baltimore. So a number of partners have really, really strong games very early in the season. And so what does that do? It gets you a huge viewership number early. Hopefully it gets you a positive year-over-year growth story. And then you can take that growth story out into the advertising marketplace and use it to sell the remaining inventory, the commercials that we don't sell. in advance of the season. So I think there's a big benefit to getting off to a very positive start and not holding those games for later in the season where a key injury or an underperforming team could result in the game just not having the value that you hoped it would have.
The other thing that really interests me, and you mentioned, Mike, how specifically, how long have you been doing this now?
Oh my God, I've been doing this for so long. This is Fox's 31st NFL season, and I've been here for 30 of them. So I've been here almost since the very beginning.
I mean, you're a perfect person to ask. Obviously, there's always going to be those franchises that drive viewership no matter what. We mentioned the Cowboys, probably throw the Packers on that list, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and on and on. And we know that quarterbacks drive matchups. We know, yeah, again, a team with an MVP candidate at quarterback is always going to be popular for TV networks to have on their air. But having done this for 30 years, what have you noticed about the trends for what makes a team more enticing, or what gives a team bigger visibility? I mean, we've seen the Lions go from a moribund franchise to a team that people are really excited to televise their games. I'm just curious what you've noticed about that, and maybe how the league picks out the next crop of teams that they're really excited to publicize.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that, and this might be a very obvious answer, but over the 30 years that Fox has been an NFL partner, the quarterback position has just become more and more important to viewership. I think when we became NFL partners, the biggest defensive stars in the NFL were bigger names and bigger stars than the biggest defensive stars are in today's game. You know, if you think back to Lawrence Taylor, that's a little bit before Fox's entry into the league, but guys like Lawrence Taylor, Ronnie Lott, Howie Long when he was playing, those big defensive stars were just as big of names as the biggest quarterback names in the league. I also think the running back position used to have more superstars than it does today. Years ago, that was Walter Payton. When Fox came into the league, it was Barry Sanders. Notwithstanding what a great season Saquon Barkley had last year, and he certainly had a case to be the MVP. But I think in general, running backs aren't quite as big of stars as they were 30 years ago. Defensive players aren't quite as big of stars. And it really has become focused on the quarterback position. And so when you have a game like Cincinnati at Buffalo, people will talk about that as Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen, the way that in an earlier era, they would have talked about a matchup of NBA stars, where the NBA is very, very much an individual star-driven product. The way that people once talked about Magic versus Bird, that's the way they now talk about Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. And the conversation is all about the quarterbacks, and it's less about running backs and less about guys on the defensive side of the ball. There are going to be purists that maybe wish it wasn't that way. Maybe we should have bigger stars on the defensive side. But I think clearly what drives viewership is a great quarterback against another great quarterback.
After that, and yeah, I mean, you're so right, it's so true in this day and age. Quarterback matchup, it feels more like basketball than ever before with the billing that those guys get. When I'm thinking about, y'all having a list of 50 games, is there anything, I would guess quarterback and probably, market size, when you're talking about the size of the city following the team? What other factors do you take into consideration when you're talking about 50 games that you're really interested in having on Fox?
Yeah, market size probably matters a little bit less than you would think. It's nice when you have a team in a big market that has success. We would love to see Chicago take a step forward this year. It's great that Philadelphia is coming off a championship season. But really, the NFL is unique in that the biggest and most powerful brands don't necessarily come from the biggest markets. So we're always going to value Green Bay very highly. We're going to value Pittsburgh pretty highly. I think in recent seasons, you've seen Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo all become very strong drivers of viewership, and none of those are top 20 markets, right? So it's nice when you have a successful team in a big market, but it's not a necessity. If you have great quarterback play and a winning team in a small market, that's going to drive national viewership, and that's why In the NFL, and this is very much a contrast to Major League Baseball and maybe a contrast to the NBA, you fight over Cincinnati versus Buffalo. You fight over Pittsburgh versus Green Bay. Markets that are not huge cities and are not huge economic markets can be extremely powerful in NFL viewership. And that balance of big market power and small market power is a major reason why the league is as nationally popular as it is.
One last thing for you, and I mentioned it earlier, the week 16 doubleheader, 11 doubleheaders this season, which I believe it's a record setter. It's a new high for Fox. What is exciting about that, and what is the power, I guess, of a doubleheader, and what that can do for y'all over the course of the season?
Well, look, I mean, it's exciting just because those are two pretty good matchups, right? We're going to have Philadelphia going to Washington. The defending champs get to go take on Jaden Daniels in his building. Chicago Green Bay is the oldest rivalry in the league. That game maybe is going to go a long way to deciding a playoff spot coming out of the NFC North. So we're excited just on the level of the quality of the games. Beyond that, I think there's a lot of discussion about sports going to streaming platforms and the NFL moving more games to streaming platforms. They've had success with Amazon. Netflix had games on Christmas last year. YouTube will become part of that as well. And that's just a reality of our business, right? But we like to be able to demonstrate that you can still have incremental games on free TV, that we can still keep the biggest and best games freely available on broadcast networks. As you say, we'll have more doubleheaders this year than anybody else, than anybody has ever had. We'll have more games than any other NFL partner this year. And we still think the core of the NFL fan experience is games on free TV on Sunday afternoon. And by adding those Week 16 games, we just sort of amplify that story and hopefully push back a little bit on the idea that everything that's big and special in sports is moving off free TV and going to pay TV platforms.
Well, I'm only speaking for myself, but yes, it's exciting with the ways the NFL is branching out into streaming services and games on different days of the week, but there's still just something so wholesome and satisfying about a Fox Sunday doubleheader. Mike Mulvihill, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thanks again to Mike Mulvihill for joining us. Before we get out of here, let's just soak it all in. Let's bask in the excitement of the schedule release. I just wanted to look at a handful of games that get me the most amped. Completely unscientific, completely subjective, but there are some bangers on this 2025 schedule, and I'd like to talk about them if that's okay. I think we mentioned enough already about the season opener, the Eagles against the Cowboys Thursday night at the Link. Definitely going to be a big one, but I am excited about the next night. I'm a little bit of a cynic, okay? I don't always love new things, but I am into this new tradition, apparently, of a Friday night NFL opener. We've waited 7 months for football. I don't know if I'd want to watch an NFL game every Friday, but on the first weekend of the year, I'm in. I'll watch NFL football every night of the weekend. And what better way to start it off this year than the Chiefs and the Chargers in Sao Paulo, Brazil, AFC West division match. These are always good games. The Chargers always play the Chiefs close, even if they rarely beat them. This was actually an Eagles game last year. It was Eagles-Packers in Brazil. The Eagles got the win. That spurred them on the way to their Super Bowl run. So don't tell me that the international travel can't pay off. Didn't bother the Eagles one bit. And especially having talked to Mike Mulvihill, we know this now. Chiefs Chargers Friday of week 1, Eagles Cowboys on Thursday of week 1. That leads in to our Super Bowl rematch on Fox week 2. Both teams will have had a long weekend to rest and recover. Chiefs will have some time to get home from Brazil before they welcome in the Eagles at Arrowhead in week 2. So about as well rested as you could ask teams to be if it's not a season opener. Exciting on multiple levels. Cannot wait for that Friday night game. 2 other games in week 1 that I really love. And spoiler alert, they're all great. because you got Bills Ravens on Sunday Night Football to open the season. But check this out. The whole NFC North is playing each other in week one. Yeah, the toughest division in football last year, the historically good division. Let's start the season off with those guys. Why wouldn't we? It starts out late window on Sunday. Lions going up to Lambeau Field to face the Packers. Detroit has swept Green Bay 2 of the last 3 years. They've also won 3 straight at Lambeau Field. I needed to know how unusual that was. The Lions haven't had a 3-year win streak at Lambeau Field since the 80s. And the last time they won 4 in a row, like so many other notable Lions accomplishments, was all the way back in the 50s. So the Lions flirting with some history if they can get another win at Lambeau Field to open the season. And then, of course, Monday night, week one, Ben Johnson debuts as the head coach of the Chicago Bears against the Minnesota Vikings at home. It's Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams going against Brian Flores, and the Vikings' vaunted defense will likely be J.J. McCarthy's first NFL start. Love everything about these scheduling decisions in the NFC North. Let's jump into Thanksgiving. Fox gets the Lions this year, the early game, the return game. It's Packers and Lions at Ford Field early on Thanksgiving. 8th Thanksgiving Day game between the Lions and Packers. Packers are 5-2 at Ford Field. This was a good one a couple years ago, 2023. Packers went up to Detroit and got a win 2 years ago. Looking forward to that. Mega matchup in the middle window on Thanksgiving as well. Chiefs and Cowboys. I don't think I need to say a whole lot else. It's the current Dallas franchise, the Cowboys, against a former Dallas franchise. That's where the Chiefs began all the way back in 1960, I believe. So there's definitely some history there, but obviously you got Mahomes, you got the Chiefs kingdom and dynasty going against Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. It's the Chiefs' first Thanksgiving game since 2006. So a new opportunity to showcase themselves on a new holiday. We know the Chiefs are starting to own Christmas, but they play on Thanksgiving this year as well. Last time Kansas City played in Dallas, Patrick Mahomes wasn't even the starter yet. 2017, Dallas beat Kansas City when Alex Smith was still the Chiefs starting quarterback. So been a long time coming for a game at AT&T Stadium for Patrick Mahomes. Buccaneers at Rams right here in LA, rounding out the Thanksgiving schedule. Couple others that I was excited to highlight. There's so many good games. How about week 13? This is a game that I've been particularly interested in since free agency. Minnesota Vikings going out to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Again, J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota now, and Seattle, the new home of their former quarterback, Sam Darnold. He's on a $100 million deal to quarterback the Seahawks from here on out. Looking forward to, I don't think it's fair to call it a grudge match. Looking forward to seeing who's having the better season by that point in the schedule. Does J.J. McCarthy take it and run with it the way that Darnold did? Can Darnold lead the Seahawks to the postseason that eluded them for the last couple of years with Geno Smith? We'll see. Mike Mulvihill already mentioned this, but they're both so good. I got to mention them anyway. 2 big Bills games on Fox this season. Cincinnati Bengals going to Buffalo to face the Bills in week 14 right here on Fox. Bills and Bengals have only played twice during Joe Burrow and Josh Allen's career. Only once in the regular season. Burrow got the better of Allen in Buffalo in the playoffs a few years ago. They've only played one time in the regular season. Burrow also won that one. So Josh Allen looking for his first win against the other marquee quarterback in the AFC. And then in week 17, just do it all over again a few weeks later, the Eagles going to Buffalo. They played an amazing game. What was it? 2 seasons ago, the 2023 season, just a phenomenal game that went to overtime in Philadelphia. This time it's in Buffalo. The reigning champs, the Bills trying to get over the hump. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, all the star power you could ever imagine. Maybe we'll have some snow or some sleet or something fun like that. Looking forward to that in a big way. Couple other big ones. Week 16, Packers, Bears, Ben Johnson going up against Matt LaFleur, who he said that he really enjoyed beating when he was in Detroit. Have a feeling Matt LaFleur. No, I don't have a feeling. Matt LaFleur even acknowledged recently that he felt some type of way about that. That should be a fun division grudge match. Also, week 16, it's the Fox doubleheader we talked about. Eagles versus Commanders. Man, I could go on and on, though. The Cowboys play the Commanders on Christmas this year. The Vikings play their return game against the Lions on Christmas. The NFL going to own the calendar from Labor Day until Valentine's Day, basically. And I'm here to tell you that I am already excited about it. This only scratches the surface of what's exciting about the 2025 NFL schedule. But those are some of my favorites. What I'm going to wind up doing is going over it all again with a pen here later tonight. And I'll come up with 10 more matchups I wish I had talked about. But we got all summer to look forward to that. For now, that does it for the show. We are actually taking a little bit of a hiatus here on the NFL on Fox podcast. We're going to take a little summer break, get ourselves in order for the upcoming 2025 season. So you won't see us in your podcast channel. You can still find us on social media. We will be doing social updates on all of our platforms at NFL on Fox Pod, whether that's TikTok, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, wherever you prefer to find us. We will be there throughout the summer. Podcast taking a little bit of a break, though. So until then, we're going to take a deep breath, digest this schedule, get ready for the 2025 NFL season. I cannot wait, y'all. As always, I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.